Do you have anything to say? Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Amber Rose, also known as the Religious Hippie. You can basically follow me on any social media platform. And today we're discussing my review for the new movie that just came out, Father Stu. I don't really know where to start with this. I've talked to a lot of people who absolutely love the movie, and I've talked to a lot of people who absolutely hated it. And so I'm going to go over my own review of it, what I thought of it personally, and I'd love to hear what you guys thought of it in the comments below. But first, a word from our sponsor, The Little Catholic Box. The Little Catholic Box is a family-owned Catholic company that sends out quarterly subscription boxes to those who sign up. You can also purchase their items individually if you would like off of their online store. These items are quality and they support other Catholic businesses too. So don't miss out. You can use my link below in the description for 10% off your purchase today. The Little Catholic Box. Celebrate your faith in everything you do. So the first thing, if you guys have not watched it yet and you don't want spoilers, do not watch this video because I am going to give tons of spoilers. In fact, the entire movie is going to be summed up in this video. So if you haven't seen it yet, you want to see it, you don't want spoilers, probably best to save this video for after you watch it. So anyways, let's get into it. So basically the movie starts and we find Stu as a young boy dancing around to an Elvis song in his underwear, and his dad's there and basically is berating his son for being an Elvis fan, so to speak, or trying to be like Elvis. And so right off the bat, we already know that his life is very abusive, and he had a younger brother who died very, very young, and he always kind of blamed himself for that, thinking like, oh, why did he die and I stay? It should have been the other way around. So he has a really rough childhood. After childhood, he goes into boxing to try and win some cheap money kind of thing. He's told by doctors after the fighting match that he has an infection in the bone and that if he continues to fight, it could be life-threatening. So he decides to stop fighting and he decides to become an actor in Hollywood. So he gets a job at a deli market, basically selling meat. And he's trying to get all of these gigs and everything, but he's really not going anywhere. He did like a mop commercial, but nothing that's like Hollywood worthy. And so one day while he's working, he sees this one girl that he really, really likes. She's really pretty, she's Mexican, she's doe-eyed, and he basically is just like, hey, let me take you out. And she's like, no, sorry. And he's set on winning this girl over, and he's told that she put up a poster and she's Catholic. She put up a poster for her Catholic church on the bulletin outside the supermarket. So he goes to her Catholic church, finds her there, blah, 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 basically tries to win her over by becoming Catholic without really knowing what that means to begin with. And so he goes through all these things. He starts turning his life around really well. He stops smoking, he stops drinking, but then he had his first confession, and that's when things started going more downhill, where he started really questioning himself and what he should be doing. So he went to a bar to go drink, and that's when a man who I've read is supposed to basically be Jesus comes up to him and tells him, like, it's not about what God owes you, it's about what you owe God kind of thing. And you have so many reasons to be angry, but you only need to find one reason to be grateful. So before leaving, this Jesus character, who's supposed to be Jesus, like a vision, basically told him, do not drive. And Stu was asking the bartender, like, oh, what was he drinking? And the bartender was like, water. So Stu ended up driving home, getting into a really bad car accident. He was on his motorcycle. He hit a car, got ran over by like 2 trucks. It was a mess. And then he had a vision of Our Lady. And then he had to go into the hospital for surgery and all this stuff. And then after that, all of that, he decides he needs to become a priest. Obviously, I'm leaving stuff out. There's a lot of fillers that I'm getting into in a bit. This is just a summary of the movie. And so he decides to become a priest, so he breaks up with his girlfriend because they actually did start dating once he became baptized and got all of his sacraments. He broke up with her to become a priest, and originally the cardinal was not going to let him in. Monsignor was not going to let him in because he was like, quote-unquote, gangster. And Stu basically argued back that, well, some of the greatest saints are reformed men, like St. Augustine, St. Francis of Assisi. So Monsignor let him in, and Stu basically began his life becoming a priest. Obviously, he was a postulant first, but during a basketball game with some of the other postulants, his legs gave out, and he found out he had a degenerative muscle disease that was very rare and there's no cure. Basically, the muscles weaken and weaken until they no longer work. And so he found that out, And over the next year, you can see his cripplingness start to affect him a lot more. His hands are now like frozen like this, and he can't really walk without his crutches, and he needs a wheelchair. There's a lot of stuff. And there's a point where he comes back to the chapel and basically has this moment with God where he just yells and is just like, why? You know, like, why me? And then another moment, he's crawling on his arms towards Our Lady. He kicked off his crutches and he fell to the ground and he started like army crawling towards Our Lady. And he just laid there until his father ended up coming and getting him up and back to his mom's house. And then after that, he decided to go start living with his mom. And then his dad was trying to bring him to church one day. And Stu found this kind of odd because his dad's like an alcoholic and he's a smoker, he's abusive, he never had an interest in his son's life. And then all of a sudden here he is like wearing a tie and taking his son to church and stuff, to find out that that was actually going to be his ordination day. Originally, he never would have thought he'd have an ordination day because the cardinal, the Monsignor, basically said no because of his ailments. He wouldn't be able to properly perform the sacraments. But Father Stu persisted, and eventually he got to his ordination day. So that's basically like the outline of the movie, okay? That's kind of a step-by-step. So now I know this is based on a true story. And anything negative I say is not towards Mark Wahlberg, it's not towards Mel Gibson or the people that decided to make this movie at all. I have some negative, but I also have a lot of positive things to say about this movie. So let's first start with the cons. The first con is that it is rated R due to language. And not just like an F-bomb here or there. Every other sentence is an F-bomb or something expletive or something suggestive in sexual material. I was kind of surprised because obviously as Catholics, we don't watch movies like this. We don't usually watch R-rated movies, but because it was a Catholic movie, I figured like, oh, well, they want to make it as accurate to Father Stu's life as possible, which I'm grateful for, you know, and I'll get to that later. However, a lot of the dialogue is very, how do I say, cringy, I guess is the good word to say. Like, I could never see normal people talking this way in real life, especially with the F-bombs. And then there's this scene at the bar where he's talking to basically what a hooker is. And it was just disgusting, honestly. The foul language, I do not suggest. I don't suggest you bring anyone under the age of 18 to this movie. It is not a kid's movie. It is not a child's movie. And I was surprised at the amount of people who brought their like 7 and 8-year-olds to see this movie in the movie theater. That kind of shocked me a little bit. I really do not suggest this movie for anyone under 18. 17, pushing it, but definitely 18's I'd say is okay. There's just a lot of sexual content as well, in the sense of like vocal sexual content. And there's like this part in the movie where he's auditioning and the director is basically like, well, how bad do you want the part? In other words, I don't want to scandalize anybody on here. Geez, this is hard. He was basically asking him to do some sexual things to get the part. How bad did he actually want the part? Like, how far was he willing to go sexually to get the part? And so Stu basically beat this director up and it was just like, yeah, that's not happening, which, yay. But there are some things in there that it's like, it's kind of hard to explain. But yeah, definitely number 1 would be the expletives and the suggestive material. Number 2, some scenes I could consider to be blasphemous in this movie. Like he punches a statue of Jesus. His mom basically asks him like, hey, can you be God's female dog? In order to like save his life or whatever. She's just like, oh, can't you just be his, you know? So there's just a lot of like things that are like derogatory towards God. Obviously, because this is Father Stu's story, they want to make it as original as possible, and what he actually experienced in his actual conversations with these people, totally understand that 100%. However, it was extremely hard to watch those parts. Overall, like just the vulgarness of the movie itself was probably just the entire con for me. But let's get into the pros. The pros of the movie are it's based on a true story and they didn't water it down. And I'm happy that they did not water down a movie. I mean, this was a real priest, and this is actually what he went through. I mean, he went through all of these events, and all these events led up to him actually becoming a priest. And so I really appreciate the fact that they tried to stay as true to the story as possible, and they weren't afraid to kind of make it an R-rated movie in the sense of trying to stay with the story of what Father Stu actually experienced. The other pros I have are that it has Mel Gibson and Mark Wahlberg in it. I know a lot of people aren't the biggest fan of the two, like in the Catholic world, and I'm not saying like you have to like them because they're Catholic and like they're big name stars. Mel Gibson did The Passion of the Christ, he directed that, and Mark Wahlberg's been in quite a few movies, although I don't know how many Catholic movies he's been in. This might be his first one. But I'm glad that they took on the challenge and they weren't afraid to do a Catholic movie. Like, honestly, I'm pretty happy about that. The other pro is that it shows redemption for even the sinfulest of people. Like when Jesus told Saint Faustina, the greater the sinner, the greater they're entitled to my mercy. I'm paraphrasing. I don't know if those are the exact words, but you get my point. And so it's really nice to actually see a hardcore movie about, like, it's not watered down. It's not like super cringy and like weird. I know a lot of people thought the dialogue was cringy. I agree with that. I don't think that some of the dialogue is how they would have actually talked. But I think it still does play into the effect of that's what Father Stu actually experienced going through his conversion. Another thing is that he converted his parents through his own example. And so by being an example for his parents actually ended up getting back together in the end, and his father started being a good father to his mom and everything like that. So that was pretty cool, and it goes to show that our example really can have a change of heart in people. Now, I'm going to be honest, it was not my favorite Catholic movie. I didn't adore this movie. I didn't absolutely love this movie, but I think for what it was good. I do think it was good. However, I don't think it's the type of movie that Catholics would go and see. It's so hard to explain. Like, I understand that the movie is targeted towards Catholics, but it's almost like it's not because of the material. Because obviously as Catholics, we don't want to scandalize our children, we don't want to scandalize ourselves, and so a lot of the material in that would scandalize somebody. But because it's in a story of redemption and of conversion of a priest, and it's based on a true story, I feel like in a sense it's okay. But still, there's like scenes in it where I'm just like, I don't know how he felt comfortable doing these scenes as a Catholic. Like, I understand he's an actor, you know, and stuff, but there are some things where I'm like, how could he feel so comfortable saying these things? And again, acting. But yeah, so basically my review of Father Stu is that I think it's a good movie, not for kids under the age of 18. And be diligent with it. You know, viewer discretion is advised, as there is a lot of cursing and expletive content, in the sense of just like verbal expletive content. There's some suggestive material, but there's no sexual scenes actually shown or anything like that. So that's really nice, because sexual scenes I hate. There's literally no point to them. They ruin movies. So it suggests them, but it doesn't actually like show it, if that makes sense. My favorite scene in the entire movie was probably when Father Stu went with one of his ordination friends, I forget his name, and they go to a prison. And his friend is like they're like frenemies, is very like upright and like proper and stuff. And he doesn't know how to deal with people who are in prison. And so basically he failed trying to preach to them. And so Father Stu stood up and was like, who are you going to call? You're going to call your mom? Like, she probably doesn't like you. You're going to call your wife? She's probably on her third husband. You're going to call your kid? No, they hate you. But the only person who doesn't hate you is God. He's always listening and he's not giving up on you. And so that was probably my favorite part in the whole movie, was when he actually talked to the prisoners and was able to take what he learned in his life and apply it in Catholicism and preaching to others. I also really liked the homily that he gave at the end, which is about suffering and how we use our suffering. The more we suffer, the closer we are to Christ. So there were a lot of redeeming qualities in this movie. The third and fourth part of the movie were really, really good. There is still a lot of cursing throughout the entire movie. There's a lot in the first and a lot in the second part. The third and the fourth, it kind of dwindles down a bit, but there's still a lot of cursing. So again, please, just viewer discretion. Anyways, overall, this movie was not bad. I actually really liked it. I cried a lot during the movie because in a way, like, it speaks to all of us because we are all in need of forgiveness, and that's what this movie kind of is about. It's about forgiveness and knowing that you're never too far gone for God to be able to see something in you worth saving. So that's my little 10 cents on the movie. Obviously, I didn't give away all the details or anything like that. There's still a lot of details in there that I did not talk about, but in general, that is the outline of the movie, my pros and cons, and then my final thoughts on the movie. Overall, I hope that we can get more Catholic movies out there because, again, Hollywood is just so corrupt and we need more Jesus in our lives. Honestly, have you seen the things they're putting on Netflix? I might have to do another movies and TV shows I regret watching because I just watched Turning Red last month. Oh my gosh. That was a doozy. So maybe I'll do another TV show and movies I regret watching because I don't know what happened to part 2, but we'll see. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys thought about Father Stu in the comments below, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!